In the 5th chapter of Joshua, there's an account of the Israelites crossing a major threshold. They've just crossed the Jordan River into the promised land of Canaan after spending 40 years wandering in the wilderness. Upon entering Canaan, the text tells us that the kings of the land were afraid. Their hearts melted in fear, and they lacked the courage needed to face the Israelites. Following this, the Lord instructs Joshua to circumcise all of the Israelites, after which, on the plains of Jericho, they celebrate the Passover for the first time in 40 years. Then, in verses 11 and 12, we read, "The day after the Passover, that very day, they ate some of the produce of the land, unleavened bread and roasted grain. The manna stopped the day after they ate this food from the land, where there was no longer any manna for the Israelites. But that year they ate the produce of Canaan." What strikes me in these verses isn't just the long-awaited celebration of the Passover, but what happens the day after the Passover. The manna stopped. Friends, that's a significant phrase. The day had come where the Israelites had settled into Canaan, and manna was no longer needed because they could now eat the produce of the land. Imagine what this moment must have been like for the Israelites. Imagine the only food that you had been eating for 40 years was manna. It would be like eating nothing but communion wafers for 40 years. And then finally, you get to eat fresh produce, fresh grapes, strawberries, and blueberries. What an incredible sensation that would be. But make no mistake, this was about far more than just a different diet for the Israelites. The end of the manna marked a significant threshold for the Israelites. It marked crossing from the wilderness to the promised land. While manna was a good thing, God's miraculous provision for God's people, it also represented the wilderness. And if the manna stopped, that means the wilderness stopped. Over these past 18 months, we've all no doubt experienced some kind of wilderness as a result of the ongoing global pandemic. We all have experienced some degree of disorientation and unsettledness in our lives and in our churches. We all likely have other personal wildernesses we are experiencing as well. Maybe as a result of sickness or losing a job, losing a loved one, relational brokenness, spiritual apathy, or some other challenge or struggle. Maybe we find ourselves wondering if the day will ever come when the wilderness will stop. And the truth is, we don't know how, when, or if God will deliver us from these wildernesses, these challenges of life. But we can trust that God has already provided us a way out of the big wilderness, the one that we all face, the wilderness of sin, darkness, and death, a life apart from God. The reality is that all other wildernesses that we experience, while significant and challenging, are small in comparison to the big wilderness. And the good news is that regardless of what happens with the smaller wildernesses, we can trust that the Lord will bring us through the big wilderness. Long after the Israelites entered into the promised land, Jesus would emphatically say to another group of Israelites, "Your ancestors ate manna and died, but I am the living bread, which I will give for the life of the world." Jesus crossed through the ultimate wilderness for us. Through his life, death, and resurrection, he crossed from death to life. And therefore, we too can leave the big wilderness of sin and death and cross into resurrection life. And if Jesus has the power to lead us out of the big wilderness, then he has the power to lead us out of any smaller wildernesses we experience as well. May you experience the presence and provision of God in whatever wilderness you're experiencing this season. May Jesus lead you from a place of emptiness to fullness in him. May you be filled with faith and hope that a day is coming where the wilderness will stop and a new season of fresh spiritual fruit will begin. And as we prepare to meet as a conference soon, let's pray that God would lead our churches and communities out of the wildernesses that they face, and that we might taste the sweet produce of the promised land that awaits. Let's pray that God would reawaken our spiritual imaginations, that we would receive fresh eyes to expectantly dream again of the new places and opportunities to which Jesus is leading us as a church.